reduced to allow you to play sports, right? Like
right.
1.6
Yeah.
GPA.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, so basically, the argument is it's like gladiators. Well, our gladiators don't need to be educated because all they're going to do is entertain us.
Right.
We don't expect them to go to school for college or
Right.
because no college is going to accept you with a 1.6
Right.
GPA.
Right.
But it allows you to play football for Washington or Riley or
Right.
Adams
Right.
and entertain folks
Exactly.
on Friday or Saturday, and that's just that it becomes almost like it's like living in a quagmire. I could imagine. I feel my chest being depressed and palpitations because just reading this, it is so stifling. I've been self-employed since 1988, and because I early in my business career I had Jewish mentors who impressed upon me the importance of being self-employed and the fact that you can never gain wealth through wages,
Right.
Because of where our tax system is
Wages
set
don't
up,
mean
right?
anything.
Yeah, the more you make, the more the government takes,
Right.
essentially.
Right.
But our tax system is set up, as we saw recently with Donald Trump, making millions, if not billions,
Right.
and not paying any taxes.
Right.
But I mean that's not illegal. That's the way our tax system was set up.
Right.
That you could be self-employed, and it encourages self-employment, which then gets us into the fact that the city hinders black self-employment.
Right.
Okay. Not only with an educational system that doesn't encourage you to have enough education to open up any
Right.
type of business that's going to generate income, but also they slam the door on any access that a business may have to the $1.7 billion in public works project. In other words, if you decide you want to have a contract, you got a contracting company, or and you can get the money to get a rubber tire loader or a dumpster or a dump truck or something like that, you can't even go in and get business from the government.
Right.
So go ahead. This is just. It's depressing, but people need to know because people walk around here like, oh, we're Notre Dame football. And
Right.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is essentially the plantation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've become so beat down, because we've been going through this for so long that when you talk to a lot of African Americans, we don't feel like anything will change.
Well, that's
right?
what I'm. Yeah.
And
Not
so
only is
complacent.
there anything to change, but and it's like, so you're getting a $7-8 job.
Yeah. Yeah. You might have 2 or 3 part time.
Yeah.
Right.
In
3 kids
in a declining neighborhood that
Yeah.
you don't own in, but
Yep.
you're paying rent. You
Right.
own nothing.
Yep.
Your kids go to really bad schools, so
Right.
they don't have an opportunity to come out of this oppressive environment.
Yep.
You're insulted by the administration. Crime is rampant. I get a lot of inside information. I had a police officer give me the information that because heroin impacts white folks mainly, and white folks with money and influence and power,
Right.
then what they did was they scrapped the SOS, which was created in South Bend Police Department to address drugs, heroin, marijuana, cocaine, everything else. So they shut that down. They used that funding to pay Lieutenant David Wells. Lieutenant David Wells, of course, is one of the officers that are on the tape. Well, of course, Karen DePape alleged in a notice of tort claim that she heard these officers talking about illegal or possibly criminal, unethical, and racist material. But he's one of the officers who got paid $500,000. Okay, so they promote him to his own, section or whatever you want to call it, unit or whatever, and he only goes after heroin because you've had some high-profile young white kids die in heroin cases,
Right.
but I'm advised by some South Bend police officers now, so they don't go after actively cocaine dealers, marijuana dealers, which is insane, or meth dealers here in South Bend, which means that you've seen an increase in shooting in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We're starting to see not Chicago level in number, the numbers because we have obviously much less people, but in the frequency of these violent acts that are being committed. You also have prostitution that's increasing on Western Avenue and Lincoln Way.
Right.
The officer said that that's because they're not actively and vigorously pursuing prostitution. And the conclusion that this officer drew was, well, apparently the mayors decided to let the crime grow in the community to get people to leave their neighborhoods, which would then depress the value. So investors could come in now and
that's it.
And gentrify.
Right.
So
right. And so so as you know, last night I was at the LaSalle Park Neighborhood Alliance meeting, and Regina had brought the Western Corridor plan.
Regina Preston, new second district councilman.
Yes. So we were kind of going over it, and one thing that we kind of discussed is that they weren't able to force a lot of black folks, older black folks in particular, to give up their homes. They weren't able to really target them with code enforcement in terms of giving them all these penalties to make them leave for not cutting their grass or whatever. But what the kind of long-term plan is they're going to wait for these folks to die out, right? And then wait for their kids to inherit the house, which obviously we know that there's not a lot of us who do have own homes, right? But wait for their kids to inherit the homes is because they know that their kids are so beaten down by the system, right? So impoverished, right? They pretty much believe that they won't be able to maintain the properties, and so that will pretty much provides an opportunity for them to come in and take the properties, through tax sale in the main. So. We are really fighting against a lot right now. We're really at the early stages of gentrification here.
But you say fighting, that implies that there's a battle going on.
Right.
But that's the other part of what we're talking about. When you say fighting, who's in the fight?
Yeah.
It's one thing. It's one thing to say ABC organization. We've identified all of this, and ABC organization is meeting now, and we're going to march, and we're going to. There's
None of that.
NAACP, there's dinner. That's right. And then the mayor, who is presiding over this and continuing this is a continuation of Joe Kernan's policies. Is a special guest
at the fundraiser
and is allowed to speak. And I mean,
Virginia Calvin, she's given an award, while at the same time, she's working to pretty much undermine the Fremont Youth Foundation.
I've heard that.
Undermine the Fremont Youth Foundation by not giving them access to Community Resource Center. And because the young lady who was so vocal and outspoken about the way, the foundation is being treated, she actually was just recently served an eviction notice by the Housing Authority. Right. So in retaliation to her basically speaking the truth, so how is it that you punish a young woman, a young mother, right? Single mother, right? Like who is in one of the poorest areas, Northwest Side, right? Like trying to organize older folks and parents and kids, right, to deal with this issue of education, because we know that 80% of black kids in the South Bend School Corporation cannot read or write on par. And can't do math. And you're looking at 90% who can't do biology, who can't do science.
Well, there also, I want you to continue, but it just made me think about this school to prison pipeline, because you have a lot of these kids are getting actual tickets. That they're being written up in school for, and now introduced into the criminal justice system. So
given citations, taken to JJC. I've heard stories about 8-year-olds taken out by the police, in zip ties, right? Like handcuffed with zip ties. We have these school resource officers, who are effectively occupying our schools and just introducing our, funneling our kids into the prison system. I think about, if you look at the data, about 33 to 35% of the student body population in South Bend school system is black. But if you look at those who've been disciplined, either put into out of school suspension or ISS or some other kind of disciplinary action, 66% of those kids are black.
I had a
gross overestimation.
I had a black school resource officer tell me in tears, literally, one day that many times when he goes to the home of a kid, because he'll try and take the kid, go home, and let's sit down and talk to one of the parents. He's one of the really proactive, caring ones. But he said his heart breaks when he gets there and the uncle or dad has just gotten out of prison or is in prison, and you've got this cycle that this kid is heading to prison basically because of the issues that he's having. And he's what he knows is an uncle, dad, grandpa, whatever, who has been introduced
Yeah.
to the system,
Yeah.
and this has become a norm in that
Yeah.
family.
And the kids are becoming institutionalized. Like when I was in middle school and high school, you know, a lot of kids would brag about how much time they served in JJC. You know, and so like our kids' minds are just warped now. You know, they don't really see a future here in South Bend. They don't even have an understanding of what it means to be a whole human being, you know, a thriving human being in the city.
Well, and this is really important. I went to, in March, I went to the Cook County Council in Cook County, Illinois. It was a hearing on gun crimes, gun violence. And there was a professor from the University of Chicago who came out of their crime lab. And the reason I'm going to say this is because a lot of people will say, well, so you know, if you live in Granger or you live in around Notre Dame, and you know it's essentially a different land and a different life experience for you. So
different
what?
city. It's
Yeah, exactly. It is.
cities.
If you drive up to the northeast side, which
It's a
used to be
different city.
80-90% black 10, 15 years ago is now 90% white because of the gentrification, right?
Right.
So if you're sitting at home and you're going, well, so what? I don't live in those neighborhoods. Well, what was discovered and what was the testimony that was given by this professor from the University of Chicago Crime Lab is this generation of young black kids have been anesthetized to violence. They don't connect in normal ways because
Right.
they've been so mistreated.
Right.
Okay, that violence to them becomes a natural response. They don't trust the police department
Right.
because they've seen the experiences their family
Right.
have with the police department. And his testimony was that you have 12, 13, 14, 15, 6-year-old kids who are armed with, you know, Tech 9s, 9mm, AK-47s, who
Yeah.
have no concern about taking a life.
Yeah.
And I was reading another article about about the young gangbangers in Chicago. They don't have money to buy a car, so they just go to the suburbs, steal cars, okay, and they're mobile now,
Right.
with weapons.
Right.
So if you think that because you live in Granger or a
Right.
nice neighborhood that
It won't affect
It
you
won't
in some
affect
way.
you.
Yeah. Guess again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted
Yeah.
to jump in and
and
say that.
just to add on to that, you know, there's actually some research that came out in some kind of British medical journal that actually showed that kids in Chicago, because they experience violence on a frequent basis every day almost, right? Like that they actually have what they call complex PTSD, right? And it's much more severe than soldiers were coming home from Iraq. And they say this because when you're in war, you actually can come home and
Well,
you can
yeah.
kind of escape it.
Yeah.
But when you're in these inner cities, you live in it every single day and you can't escape it because poverty is a trap, right? So you are just entrenched in it, caged in it. So
it's a way of life.
yeah, exactly, right.
You know, you're absolutely right. As a Marine Corps veteran doing Vietnam, we had a 12.5-month tour in Vietnam. And guys came back messed up from that. I do a lot of counseling as a pastor of war veterans now, Gulf War veterans. And these guys are doing 1 and 2 tours and are not only bipolar, but also PTSD.
Right.
But even that
Yeah.
is not an 8-year-old,
Right.
I mean a 16-year-old who since he was
Yeah.
on this earth
16, 17 years of living in violence.
has lived in degradation, has lived with no respect from the police department,
Yeah.
has been subjected to all types of
Abuse at home.
and that type of thing, and denied nutrition, denied, you know, any type of caring, loving environment, you know, because if there's 2 parents, they're bitter and angry about having to work 1 or 2 jobs just to survive. So this is just such it's insane.
It is.
But you know, we have elected officials in South Bend who do like photo op kind of stuff, not railing. I mean, they may like say, well, this is bad, but they, at the end, either they vote for what's bad and tell you they have to vote for what's bad,
Right.
or their numbers are marginalized because they don't make up a majority of the council.
I'm so tired of that excuse.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, you know, so am I. I
Right,
mean,
right,
you know,
right,
but
right.
I'm just saying that. So all of this bad stuff, and we haven't even there's much more that it's on the table here.
Right, right.
But you would seem to think that there would be such an outcry from the people who've been subjected to this that they would stop reelecting the same officials
Yep.
with the same excuses.
Right.
Some of them don't even have excuses.
Right.
Okay. I mean, some of them won't even. If you have a public meeting